Number 9. Caitlin Conley. When Caitlin Conley was dating Adam Yoder, she began working at his mom Mary's chiropractic clinic in the upstate New York town of Whitesboro. But things at the practice were turned upside down when 60-year-old Mary suddenly passed away one day in 2015. Her sudden death made little sense, especially since Mary lived an extremely healthy lifestyle and had no serious health problems to speak of. She had become violently ill and was rushed to the hospital, where she went into cardiac arrest several times and then died. It was clear to investigators that Mary had suffered more than just a simple stomach bug. They determined that she was poisoned with a drug called colchicine, which is used for treating gout. At first, they suspected Mary's husband, William, of being the culprit. But he maintained his innocence and was soon cleared of any role in a horrifying crime. Detectives then looked to Adam, who they say was prone to fits of rage. An anonymous letter they received also pointed the finger at Mary's son as the killer, but he, too, insisted he had nothing to do with his mother's death. Adam proved that he wasn't even in town when Mary died, despite a bottle of colchicine being found in his vehicle, prompting investigators to turn to Caitlin Conley as their next suspect. Based on the on and off couple's volatile history, the crime would have fit the 24-year-old's established pattern of doing extreme things to either get Adam back or get revenge against him over a breakup. Further evidence showed that Conley had poisoned Adam in the past and linked her definitively to Mary's death. Conley's plan initially worked by getting Adam back into her life, but only briefly. She's now serving a 23-year prison sentence for manslaughter. Number 8. Michael McDonough. Father of 3, Michael McDonough was recently brutally attacked outside his home in Strabane in Northern Ireland by some enemies who had flown into the area to attend a family event. Shocking footage shows friends and neighbors desperately trying to stem the bleeding from the man's neck while waiting for emergency responders to arrive. The attackers slashed McDonough's throat to get revenge for his involvement in a knife attack against another man 7 years earlier, leaving him fighting for his life in front of his kids. Luckily, he survived. Paramedics said he was extremely lucky and that the blade had narrowly missed a main artery. McDonough apparently didn't realize that the resentment toward him had festered over the years. But he admitted to committing the earlier stabbing after he was forced to pay for it in the more recent attack. He told the Sunday World newspaper that the prior incident had happened so long ago that he thought it had been long forgotten about. Now that he's paid for what he did, McDonough said that he was disgusted by what happened, but that he hopes the score has been settled for good. The unexpected act of violence left community members feeling worried about future bloodshed, prompting local leaders to call for mediation before it leads to any lives being lost. McDonough made it clear that he doesn't want any revenge attacks to happen on his behalf, and that he wants to leave the past in the past and for everyone to move on peacefully with their lives. Number 7. Brian Kessner. 38-year-old Brian Kessner let his bitterness over his divorce get the better of him one day in 2017 when he shot his 28-year-old ex-wife, Krista Copeland, in front of their young son. The needless tragedy happened on a Sunday morning outside a Fort Worth, Texas library. After shooting Krista, Kessner dialed 911 and reported his horrifying crime. He then drove a short distance away and turned the gun on himself, fatally shooting himself in the head. Krista was still alive when police arrived at the scene. She was rushed to the hospital, but unfortunately succumbed to her injuries a little while later. The couple's son was unharmed, at least physically, although he was undoubtedly traumatized by what he had seen. Records showed that the couple married in 2012, and it appeared as though they had separated in the years leading up to the fatal shooting, according to the Daily Mail. Krista had agreed to meet with Kessner in a public place so that he could visit with their son. Witnesses claimed to hear loud shouting between the former couple in the moments leading up to the shooting. Krista's friends and family members remembered her fondly as a kind person who did what she could to help others. They had less touching words to share about Kessner, who one person said they hope burns in hell for snatching Krista's life away from her way too soon. Number 6. John Hughes and Sean Kevin McGinnis. One day in late 2017, Sean Kevin McGinnis went to his girlfriend's Portland, Oregon home with his friend John Hughes, where they encountered Robert Cody Kaiser, who they believed was having an affair with the girlfriend. Intent on getting revenge for the alleged affair, the men stood outside with guns, while McGinnis yelled that he would burn the house down if everyone in it didn't come outside. Kaiser exited the home through a side door, at which point McGinnis fired a single shot into the 52-year-old's chest. He died almost immediately. Minutes after the shooting, someone dialed 911 to report hearing gunshots. Police found Kaiser's body at the scene. While limited details have been revealed about the crime and the circumstances leading up to it, it's clear that Hughes and McGinnis were on a mission to make Kaiser pay for the alleged affair. Both men were recently found guilty of second-degree murder and are serving a life sentence with the possibility of parole after 25 years. McGinnis and Hughes are both in their 50s, which means they could very well spend the rest of their lives behind bars. It gives them a lot of time to think about their actions and whether the crimes are worth the consequences. Number 5. Lonel Anderson. In what his attorneys would later describe as a psychotic episode, 49-year-old Lonel Anderson walked into a bar in Roselawn, Ohio one day in 2021 and shot a man he had never met, named Derek Smith, in the head, execution style. Smith was one of the only white patrons in the bar, leading prosecutors to accuse Anderson, an African-American man, of shooting him dead out of a disdain for white people. Lonel's lawyers, on the other hand, claimed that he had stopped taking his medication for schizophrenia and bipolar disorder and lost touch with reality prior to committing the horrific crime. Earlier that day, Anderson's mother had dialed 911 to report that he had threatened to kill a woman and her young daughter. She reportedly planned to go to the court the following Monday to try getting her son involuntarily committed in hopes that he would get the help he needed. But by the time Monday rolled around, Anderson had killed Smith and was in much deeper trouble than he would have been if his condition had not compelled him to do anything violent. He committed the crime with a stolen gun because his criminal record barred him from owning a firearm. Prosecutors argued that this showed intent, and they maintained their stance that Anderson acted out of racial hatred, pointing out some statements he had made during a police interview about how he hated white people. He pleaded guilty to aggravated murder and was sentenced to 28 years to life in prison. At the sentencing, Smith's mother, Jody Montgomery, said that she agreed the crime was racially motivated and that mental illness is not an excuse for murder. Number 4. Tit-for-tat shootings. In 2018, British police investigated the illegal distribution and sale of guns in Nottingham as part of a mission codenamed Operation Snapper. Their findings led them to focus on one particular gang that seemed to be engaging in so-called tit-for-tat shootings and stabbings with members of rival gangs. The incidents appear to have been non-fatal, and while the situation may therefore seem trivial to some of our American viewers, the UK government takes gun-related violence extremely seriously, and some charges carry much heavier sentences than they would in the US. After one successful shooting was carried out in 2019, law enforcement managed to foil a revenge plot before anyone got hurt. The incidents were kept quiet until recently, when news articles reported that two men in their 20s, Richard Burnett and Traquan Lambert, were sentenced to prison time for their roles in the shootings. Burnett, who's 28 years old, received a 24-year sentence for various weapons crimes, as well as conspiracy to commit grievous bodily harm and other charges. 22-year-old Lambert will spend 18 years behind bars for similar offenses. Both men are required to serve at least 2/3 of their sentences in prison and will be on parole for the remainder. These heavy-handed punishments serve as a reminder that even in situations where nobody is seriously hurt, some countries have a zero-tolerance policy for gun violence, and it's probably smart for people to work out their differences some other way. Number 3. Joseph O'Connor. In recent years, many governments throughout the world have outlawed a crime known as revenge porn, which is what it sounds like. If you need an explanation, it's when someone shares intimate photos of another person that were never meant to be seen by anyone else. A 27-year-old Irish insurance salesman named Joseph O'Connor recently learned about the consequences that these newly imposed laws can carry after he got in trouble for publishing nude photos of his ex-girlfriend with links to her social media pages. It was the first case of its kind to be prosecuted in Galway District Court, where Judge Mary Fahy determined that O'Connor's image-related abuse would have caused the victim to be seen as a piece of meat, and that it also resulted in people leaving degrading comments about her. At the beginning of the trial, both the victim and O'Connor's identities were withheld from the public. O'Connor was identified as the suspect only after the victim specified that she would like to remain anonymous, but that she wanted people to know who her allegations were being levied against. The court respected her wishes. Prosecutor Garda Tariq Moran explained that the woman was extremely upset when she filed her initial complaint, which details how her ex-boyfriend had posted the private photos shortly after she ended their relationship. The victim discovered her former partner's dirty deed after she began receiving countless friend requests from strangers on social media, and then Googled her own name in an attempt to figure out why. While the photographs didn't contain any of the woman's identifying features, they were linked to her social media, which led to her receiving unwanted contact and harassment. When police interviewed the suspect, he allegedly readily admitted to posting the photos and the links. He confessed to doing it for several reasons, including for revenge after the woman allegedly sent an intimate photo of him to their friends in a group chat while they were still together. O'Connor apparently never forgot about the incident and was still angry about it after the breakup, which made him feel justified in his decision to share the woman's photos with the entire world. But he recently learned that there are consequences to publicly posting your ex's naked pictures, which required the victim to fight to get the images removed from numerous websites, some of which refused to take the photos down. Considering the seriousness of his actions, O'Connor received a 9-month jail sentence. Number 2. Salim and Tariq Hamza. Last October, 2 members of an infamous crime family were shot dead in Sydney, Australia. Police were left baffled by the deaths of 18-year-old Salim and his father, 64-year-old Tariq, despite their ties to the Middle Eastern gang known as the Hamza clan. Investigators are now starting to think that the violent slayings were carried out in retaliation to at least one of numerous shootings that they've tied the father-son duo to in recent months. They're particularly suspicious that Salim and Tariq met their untimely ends in relation to the shooting death of 22-year-old Shady Kanj, who was a low-ranking member of a rival crime organization called the Alameddines. Kanj was murdered just 2 months before the Hamzas were killed in an onslaught of bullets while they sat in a parked utility vehicle. Detectives believe that Salim was the target of the shooting and that Tariq was hit unintentionally. Paramedics tried to save the men but were unsuccessful. While no arrests have been made, police have determined that the pair died in a revenge killing and are getting closer to untangling the mystery. Number 1. Marlon Valdez. One day in 2019, a young man named Marlon Valdez perched himself on the rooftop of a vacant home in Houston, Texas, with an assault rifle in hand, and waited for 2 brothers he had made enemies with to pass by. The 18-year-old then killed the pair, who he knew from high school, in what can only be described as an ambush shooting. Valdez had allegedly gotten into a fight with the victims just days earlier and cleverly but cruelly decided to exact his revenge sniper style, giving them essentially no opportunity to run or defend themselves. Investigators found 58 shell casings at the scene of the brutal double murder, leaving 18 and 20-year-olds Josue and Maximo Aguilar dead. 2 others were also shot but survived. One of the victims was expecting a baby, and the other had just welcomed a child. Valdez was convicted of capital murder and will remain behind bars for the rest of his life for his decision to seek deadly revenge over a rivalry that he could have probably just let go of and moved on from. Thanks for watching. Would you rather become the target of a former classmate's revenge campaign over a years-old rivalry that you thought was long over, or get drunk at your high school reunion only to tell someone from the past what you really thought of them? Let me know in the comments below.